Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and very good day to every one of you. So now we want to continue with the new chapter, which is our chapter 3, partial derivative. But before we go further about the partial derivative, which is not in this class, we will look up onto a few subtopics that we relate to the partial derivative later. So the first subtopic that we want to say is about the function of two or more variables. Okay, so before this, we have dealing with a function. As we all know that when we are dealing with the two unknown variable, which is x and y, it will involve the function of one variable only. Okay, why we say that the x and y will be the function of one variable? Because we always denote that. Okay, let's say we have an equation of y in terms of x. Okay, so let's say you have y equal to 2x squared plus 3. So this function of y also denote as a function of x, fx. Okay, it's meaning that this function will be changed when we change the value of x. So this function depends on the value of x. So this one is the function of one variable, even though we have the two variable x and y here. Okay, so one variable will be the subject and one variable will be the one that depends on the another variables. Okay, so this called as a function of x. Or on the other way, if we have, let's say, x equal to 2y squared minus 3, then we call this function as the function of y. Okay, because y is the unknown in the equation and x is the subject of the equation. Okay, so this one is called as a function of one variable. But now when we are dealing with the when we are dealing about with the surface, okay, it involves three axes or three unknown or three variable x, y, and z. Therefore, we actually have the function of two variables. It's no more one variables, because let's say I'm writing a function in term of y and the function z. Okay, for example, we have z equal to 3x minus 2y squared. So this function with z as a subject can also be denoted as the function of x, y, because we have x and y as a independent variable, because this z is depends on the value of x and it depends on the value of y. So x and y is the unknown variable, which is independent variable. Okay, so we have now the function of two variables. Okay, we have the function of two variables. The variable is x and y. Okay, and z will be the subject. So when we are dealing with surface that involve three unknown or three variable x, y, and z, we actually dealing with the function of two variables. So for a function of single variable fx, the output value is derived from a corresponding single independent. So if we have fx, okay, let's say this one, we have fx. Okay, so it depends or is derived from a corresponding single independent variable x. So the independent variable x here is independent variable where the y depends on the value of x. Y will change when x is changed. Okay, likewise for a function of two or more variables, the output value is depend on more than one independent variable. So when we have a two variable function, okay, function with two variables, then this two unknown here is the independent variable, which we will have two independent variable. Okay, and we also can deal with more than two variable. For example, if we have the equation of z equal to 3x minus 2y squared plus 4w, for example, so this function of z also can be written as the function of x, y, and w, where x, y, and w is the independent variable. So this function have three variables. Okay, so function z equal to fxy is a function of two variables. X and y was referred as the independent variable. So x and y here is independent. Who is depend on the value of x and y? It's z or fxy. Okay, so z was referred as dependent variable because z depends on the value of x and y. If x and y change, then the value of z will be changed. If we know the value of x and y, we can find the value of z. It will give us a surface if we plot all points x, y, and z. So because of we know that the surface will dealing with the x, y, z axis. So therefore, when we can find the value of z, when we are given the value of x and y, we can find the value of z because value of z depends on the value of x and y. So if we plot the function that have x, y, and z, then what we will get in return is the surface. Okay, so we will get the surface. For example, here you can see the function of this surface is z equal to x squared plus y squared, or we also can write this equation as function of xy equal to x squared plus y squared. So now the independent variable in this function is x and y, and who is depends on x and y is the z. Alright, so for a function of two independent variable, which is we have f as the function of x and y, the domain is the set of all possible values of x, and y is the set of inputs. So if we need to find the domain of the function, so the domain of the function is the value of x and y that make the function possible. Okay, iaitu value of x dan y yang menjadikan function itu can be defined. We can get the value. Okay, kalau kita cari domain, kita mestilah cari value yang menyebabkan function kita itu is defined, wujud. Okay, so the y ataupun the value will be the set of inputs. The range of f is the set of all possible values of z from the domain, okay, which is output. So the domain we call as input. If we get the domain adalah range value x dan y yang possible, yang menyebabkan function kita itu exist. Dan apabila kita substitute masuk nilai x dan y, okay, so the result is called as a range, okay, ataupun kita panggil the output. So kalau awak ingat dulu masa zaman sekolah, dulu kita ada belajar the simple domain and range. For example, if we have the domain here 2, 3, and 4, and the function given that fx equal to 3x squared. Okay, so who will be the range or the output? It will be each value of x have been will need to be substituted in this function. So let's say for this one, 2 power of 2 is 4, 4 times 3 is 12. So 12 is one of the output. Or we also call a range. Okay, 3 power of 2 is 9. 9 multiplied by 3 is 27. So 27 is one of the output. Okay, so if we do this reversely, okay, let's say I put the value of 12 here. For example, I put a value of 12, 27, and also 48 here. Okay, so I ask you, what is the domain for this function? So the domain for this function is the value of x that make the function is possible. What is the value of x that make the function give the value of 12? It is 2. What is the value of x that will make this function give the value of 27? That one is 3. What is the value of x that make this function give the value of 48? It is 4. Okay, so this one is the domain which make this function possible. Okay, make this function can be defined. Alright, so for example, let's say example here, we have been asked to determine the domain of each function. So you need to see what is the possible value of x and y so that your function cos y sin x will be defined. Okay, so if you see, there is no numbers that will make x and y cannot be defined. What is the meaning of cannot be defined? For example, if I have the function z equal to 5 over x. Okay, x equal to 0. If x equal to 0, this function will be 5 over 0, which is undefined. Means that the domain cannot involve or cannot include x equal to 0. That means the value that make our function possible or our function can be defined. Because the value of 0 will make this function cannot be defined, so we cannot include the value of 0 in our domain. If there is no numbers, okay, if there is no numbers that will make our function is undefined, means that the value of x and y will be all real numbers. So we just need to put x and y is the element of real number. Okay, the symbol r here is the real number. Why I put r square? Because x and y is two variables, so we have r and r, therefore it's r square. Okay, so how to write the domain? Okay, you put the variable and then this is the symbol and then you put the condition. Okay, here is the condition. On the right side is the condition, on the left side is the variable. Okay, let's see another function. Okay, let's see another function. Okay, the question asks us to determine the domain of this function. Z equal to ln 3 minus x minus y. So when you have been asked to find the domain, means you need to find what is the value of x and y that will make this function possible. So it's hard actually to answer because it will be many. So you just need to ask yourself, what is the number of x and y that will make your function is impossible or undefined? Is there any value of x and y that will make your function is undefined? Okay, for example, here we have ln. Okay, and you need to know that we cannot find ln 0. If you use your calculator and you press ln 0, you will get math error. Math error means your function is undefined. Means that everything inside this bracket cannot be 0 or negative. Sorry, it can be 0 but it cannot be negative number. Let me try. Okay, we can find what is ln 0. No, it's math error. Ln negative 1. Ln negative 1. Okay, you cannot find the value of ln 0 or negative number. So means that the value inside this bracket must be greater than 0, because you cannot find ln 0 and you also cannot find ln negative number. Okay, so the condition that you have now, the value in this bracket must be greater than 0. So you have 3 minus x minus y greater than 0. So you will have, if you move this negative x, negative y to the right, you will have x plus y. So this one is like this, right? So I put like this because x and y originally from the right side, I put it in the left side. So you see the muncung here, so muncung need to be here. Okay, and you have 3 here. So this is the condition that you need to fulfill to ensure that the value of your function is defined. Okay, so ini adalah condition yang you kena fulfill untuk you pastikan function you itu boleh wujud. Kerana kita tak boleh cari ln kosong ataupun ln negative number. So itu adalah satu condition yang kita kena fulfill. Okay, so this is the condition of your domain. Your domain is all real number except the value that will get x plus y less than 3. For example, if x equal to 1, y cannot be equal to 1 because 1 plus 1 will be 2. If x equal to 2, y cannot be 0 because 2 plus 0 is 2, which is less than 3. So we can use any real number, but we need to ensure we fulfill this condition. So how can you write the domain of this function? The domain of this function is the domain for the function x and y, the variable. And what is the condition? This one is the first condition. You need to ensure that your x plus y must be less than 3. Okay, your x plus y must be less than 3. Okay, sorry, just now I misunderstand. X plus y must be less than 3. So for example, if your x is 2, your y cannot be 2 because 2 plus 2 is 4. Okay, why? If you have x equal to 2, y equal to 2, and you will get 4. So here, 3 minus 2 minus 2 will be 3 minus 4, which is equal to negative 1. So you cannot find non-negative 1. So you need to make sure that your x plus y is always less than 3. So that one is the first condition. And what is actually the value of x and y? X and y actually can take all the real number except this is the condition that you need to fulfill. So this is how we write the domain of our two variable function. So let's see another example here. You have been asked to find what is the domain for z equal to cert 5 minus x square minus y square. So now you need to ask yourself, okay, in order for you to make sure this function can be defined, what is the value that you cannot have inside cert, inside square root? You cannot have negative number inside square root. You can square root 0, it will give you 0, but you cannot square root negative 1, for example, because it will give you math error. This one is complex number, which is I. Okay, so now the condition that you need to fulfill is the value inside this square root must be greater than or equal 0. Okay, just now why we don't put less than or equal 0? Because you cannot find the value of non-zero as well. Okay, so now we can find the square root of 0. The one that we cannot find is the square root of the negative number. Therefore, you need to make sure the function inside the square root here is not negative number. So how you write that? 5 minus x square minus y square must be greater than or equal to 0. Kena lebih besar atau sama dengan kosong. Sama dengan kosong tak apa. Okay, so from here, if I pindahkan, sama macam tadi, I pindahkan this one pergi sebelah. So what you have is x square plus y square is less than or equal to 5. Okay, so this is the condition that you need to fulfill. Other than that, your value of x and y can take any real number. Okay, your value of x and y can take any real number. Just you need to fulfill the condition that the value of x square, the value of x and y that you choose need to fulfill the condition x square plus y square must be less than or equal 5 to ensure you will not get the negative value inside here. Because if you get the negative value inside this function, your function is undefined. So that one is the domain of the function. So let's see the last example here. You need to find what is the domain of this function. So if you can see here, you have fxyz is equal to 1 over x plus y plus z to the power of 2. So now, instead of you asking yourself, what is the value of x, y, and z that make this function defined, it will be any real number, but you need to ask yourself, what is the value of x, y, and z that will make this function is undefined. So you need to ask yourself, how the fraction will be undefined? The fraction will be undefined when the value of denominator is equal to 0. When the value of denominator is equal to 0, you will get infinity or math error, means that your function is undefined. So you need to avoid to get 0 in the denominator. So what you need to put here is the function in denominator, which is x plus y plus z to the power of 2, must not equal to 0. It can be any value, positive or negative, but it cannot be 0. Because if it be 0, then the function is undefined. So our domain, the condition of our domain, it can be any real number. Why it power of 3 here? Because it's involved 3 variable. Okay, and this is the additional condition. So how to write the domain? Who for? The domain is for who? For x, for y, and for z. Then what is the condition? X plus y plus z. Okay, so you can also put square. Oh, actually you don't need to put square because x plus y plus z is not equal to 0. Okay, 0 square is also 0, so it's the same. So just don't need to put the square. Just put x plus y plus z is not equal to 0. Okay, x plus y plus z is not equal to 0. Other than that, our x, our y, and our z can take any real value. So you need to put power 3 because we have 3 variable here. So this is how we determine the domain of the function. So in order to find the domain of the function, you need to exclude the value of the variable that will make the function undefined. We only choose the value of the variable that will make the function possible. So by default, actually the variable will be all element in real numbers, but it may be depends on a certain condition. For example, this one cannot be equal to 0. For example, this one, it cannot be negative number. Okay, so that one is the domain of the function of 2 variables.